Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story about a bandaged foot, a crowded train, and an entitled Karen. Our tale takes place on the London Underground, the Central Line to be precise, early one morning. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Karen tries to make me give up my seat on the train for her. I have a few Karen stories. This one happened a few years ago on the Underground in London, which is like our version of the Metro. It was early morning and I had the day off, but my girlfriend was going to work. I decided to go with her part of the way, then go back home to chill. This was the Central Line for anyone interested, and it gets crazy busy. I'd injured my foot the day before and my foot was visibly bandaged. We get on the train and both my girlfriend and I get seats. An older lady got on a few stops later. I got up and gave her my seat, even though I could barely stand, and the train starts to fill up. There are no more seats. A few stops later, someone gets off and there's a seat about a half meter from where I'm standing, next to where my girlfriend is sitting. I spot the seat and start hobbling to it. There's another door maybe 2 meters from where the empty space is, and a Karen comes through and spots the seat when I do. She's maybe in her mid-40s and I'm in my late 20s. It would have been obvious to anyone with sense that she isn't going to get to the seat before me, but I see her racing for it. I only have a couple of steps to get to it, so I get to it and sit down. She doesn't stop racing to the chair. She comes to me and says very loudly, "Can you get up? That's my seat. I want to sit down." I look at her and everything about her is entitled, and she's looking at me with my bandaged foot and telling me to get up. She looks like Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter. I politely said, "No thank you." She then gets really close and starts shouting, "You need to get out of my seat. You could see I wanted to sit there and you still sat down. I'm tired and I want to sit down. Get up now." I totally ignored her. She then started telling everyone how I had no respect and had stolen her chair. My girlfriend had had enough and told her I was a very kind and respectful man, and if she asked nicely, I would probably have gotten up. The lady I stood up for earlier then said very loudly, "He even gave his seat to me." Everyone in the carriage is now murmuring at this point. Karen then says to me, "Get up, please." My girlfriend's looking at me to say she's kinda asking nicely now, "Get up," and I just ignored her. I wasn't getting up for this lady. Karen started shouting again about how my kind of people are so rude and ill-mannered. I'm black and she's white, and the other passenger started saying, "She can't say that." A man then stood up for her to sit down, and she sat opposite me. She was quiet now, but kept staring at me until I got off at Stratford. I've never forgotten her. Trying to reserve a seat on the Central Line's what got me? That's God-level entitlement. And our second story. Sister-in-law is $300,000 in debt, but that's not her fault. My sister-in-law, let's call her Shirley, is a class act. She's basically been taking out credit cards as well as loans from banks, friends, and family since she turned 16 because, in her words, she didn't want to be a poor, low-class loser like her parents. She's now run up about $300K in debt, and this is in a poor country, so it's even worse. She's borrowed untold thousands from her loser parents, as well as from other family members who she's criticized endlessly for being low class and private. She borrowed several thousand from my husband several years ago, but he stayed on her to pay him back, though it took a few years. When he gave her the loan, she had said it was to pay off her house. She has a 5-bedroom villa in a very nice area of a nice city. Instead, she put down payments on 2 brand new cars, even though both of her older ones were relatively new and working fine. Her daughter attends an exclusive private school and always has the latest tech. They go on beach trips a few times a year. Her philosophy is pay the creditors off just a bit by borrowing money from friends and relatives who are easier to put off than die in massive debt. She thinks she's a genius that no one else can manage money like her. But here's what makes her a truly terrible person. She basically bled her parents, especially her mom, dry. Her parents, my in-laws, own their own home. They're not rich, but their pensions cover most of their needs, and my husband helps them out as well. My mother-in-law found out she had cancer a few years ago. My husband wanted all 3 kids to pitch in and take her to the Capitol for treatment and set her up in an Airbnb while she recovered. Shirley refused to contribute, saying the state-run medical system was fine. Her husband's a doctor there, and he'd oversee things, she said. My husband was enraged, but his mom agreed to it, so not much he could do. After a grueling year, my mother-in-law was cancer-free. Shirley's husband did periodic checkups, occasionally sent her for labs. She remained in remission. Then a year later, she began complaining of a pain in her back. Shirley and her husband brushed it off for months, saying she just needed to rest more. Then one day, my mother-in-law couldn't move her legs. After being rushed to the local hospital, the doctors found she had a massive tumor in her spine that had essentially broken her back. The same song and dance occurred again, my husband insisting she get private care in the Capitol and Shirley rejecting that. She'd take care of her in her own home, she said, as her husband had confirmed the cancer was too far advanced and she'd just need hospice care. Again, enraged husband, but mother-in-law agreed. They could hire a team of nurses, Shirley said, but could my husband pay for that? Because Shirley can't right now. She'll pay him back. So my mother-in-law went into hospice care at Shirley's house. We were there as much as we could be, but we had a baby and lived far away. Once, while we're there, my mother-in-law pulls my husband aside and tells him she's scared because Shirley's been pressuring her to sign some documents and the painkillers were fogging up her brain and she didn't understand. Shirley told us they were just power of attorney docs to allow her to make emergency decisions. We were uncomfortable, but since mother-in-law was living there and Shirley's husband is a doctor, we thought it'd be okay. Then my mother-in-law passed. The day of the funeral came and Shirley and her family were nowhere to be found. We called and called, no answer. We asked one of the aunts about it and she rolled her eyes and told us what had happened. This aunt had been planning the funeral with Shirley and my father-in-law. During the planning, she discovered Shirley had convinced my mother-in-law about a year ago, right before the doctors found the cancer, and while her doctor husband had been caring for her to take out a life insurance policy on her behalf, with Shirley as the sole beneficiary. We would later find out that she somehow bribed a notary to fake the death certificate date and cause of death so she got more money. I'm not sure how that worked, but that's what I was told. In the country we were living in, pretty much anything is possible with a bit of cash. She'd also convinced my in-laws to sign over ownership of the house to her so she could secure another large loan from the bank using the house as collateral. The house was actually supposed to go to my husband and brother-in-law. My husband and brother-in-law get on the phone with Shirley and confront her. Shirley starts screaming at them, telling them their lives have been so much easier than hers and that she's done so much more for their parents than they have, and just telling a whole load of lies about how my husband has always been a freeloader. He's worked since he was 13, paid for his own education, and has a high-level job after working like a dog for 2 decades. She said everyone has always taken advantage of her, and that's why she's in so much debt. Everyone else was at fault except her. We went no contact after that, but brother-in-law and father-in-law have gotten sucked back into her orbit again, and both have loaned her money. She's even been trying to get my father-in-law to let her sell the house for him, and then she gives him an allowance every month out of the money from the sale, and he can live with her. Meanwhile, my husband and I moved to the U.S. and are just enjoying our debt-free, entitled, personless lives. Some people never learn that they're being used by a con artist who lies to their faces to get what they want. And our last story. Move your grandson and let your niece live there. I have 2 brothers. We're 5 years apart, so when I ran off to see the world, baby brother, 50, was 8 years old. Not the brother I'm talking about, though. This is middle brother, 55. Our great-grandfather was an actual coal baron. He owned several mines, had his own trucks, and even a spur railroad line to send the coal to the main tracks. Our grandfather bought land alongside a main river and built a coal tipple to load their coal and others onto barges to be sent down the river to where it was needed. Before he died, grandfather sold it all. It was in the late 60s, kept enough money for him and grandmother, then the rest was put into trust for kids and grandkids. At age 21, I was given $322,000. I bought a car and a motorcycle, then thanks to my grandmother's wise advice, I forgot that I had it, just left it in the trust, until she found a farm for sale. I snapped it up. The house needed work, brought everything up to code, put a lot of insulation in. Later on, I bought one of those half-round steel garages, and over the years, it's been turned into a living space. Quite nice. People call it the cave. A buddy sprayed a few inches of foam on the walls, and we painted it gray. It's tucked back in the tree line and needs no AC in the summer. Heats a wood-burning stove, plenty of wood too, wireless, great digital TV signals. Several friends and family members have stayed there when they needed a place. Since the property's far closer to my grandson's high school than their house, my daughter let him and a buddy live there for almost 3 years. He starts college at the same college my niece is going to graduate school. She needed a place to stay, and her mom asked me, and I said of course. The problem started 2 days ago with grandson calling asking if I told my brother him and his friend had to move into the half-round and give the house to his cousin and a previously unmentioned friend. Oh no, I didn't, so he told his uncle to F off and handed the phone to middle brother. After a very short argument on how unsatisfactory it was for his golden child and how bratty my grandson was, they left. When he hung up on me, I texted his wife and said the deal was off thanks to middle brother. I answered one text from her explaining what happened. I refused to answer middle brother's calls or texts asking me to change my mind. Baby brother called me laughing. Middle brother called him on the verge of tears, begging for him to change my mind. So he did beg me to charge them the standard rate of rent for this. With utilities included, that'd be about $12,000 a year. Get the first and last, plus sign a 2-year lease. His wife, sister-in-law, is a lawyer. She'll write a great lease. He said she'd offered. Long ago, sister-in-law came to ask me if her friend, a victim of domestic abuse, could hide there. You don't say no to that, but to her it was an act of kindness she could find nowhere else at the time. I told baby brother to have her draw it up and send it, make grandson the landlord. Baby brother and sister-in-law got to work on it, and every base was covered. Middle brother has the lease, but I've not heard back. Our mother would be mad at me. Dad would laugh. He's still alive, but dementia took his mind and memories. If someone got confused, OP owns 2 buildings on the same property, but apparently doesn't live there at all. 1, the main house is occupied by grandson and his buddy. 2, the half-round, aka the cave, is a converted garage. While various people have stayed there at different times, nobody's living there now. OP told his brother that niece could move into the house too. Brother told grandson that grandson and buddy had to move out of the house and into the half-round so niece and her friend could have the house to themselves. You are a special kind of person. Please continue to be you, because you amaze me. Thank you for this story. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.